Very good.
Okay, call to order. This is the Wednesday, March 10th, 2021 Design Review Commission. First item on the agenda is roll call. Can we have a roll call? Armin? Present?
Here.
John?
Here.
Kristen?
Here.
Eugene?
Here.
And myself, Glenn Cass is here. Second item is adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
All motion.
Thank you, Kristen. Do I have a second?
Good.
Eugene
Second.
seconded it. All in favor, let's go through. Armin?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Eugene?
Aye.
And Glenn is aye. Third item is public comments. These are items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any raised hand or star nines that have come in today?
Currently, no raised hands.
Thank you. Move to the next item, which is the consent calendar. Now, we have several things on the consent calendar. I think some of them we need to address separately because, for instance, the minutes of meeting.
Yeah.
There's one set of meeting minutes where two people will need to abstain. So we can do items 4A and 4B as the first group. If I have a motion to adopt those minutes as is.
So moved.
I motion.
Okay, a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Armin?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Eugene?
Aye.
And Glenn is aye. Next item is the minutes for February 10th. This is item 4C. Eugene and Kristen will need to abstain. So do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? John makes the motion.
Actually, I had one minor correction. I
Okay,
had one. There was an item in there where there was a typo and a date. This is regarding discussions in the Mail House, $2 Park, page 6, line 17. The date was said December 2016, 6 years ago or 5 years ago, and it was actually December 16th, 2020 was the correct date.
yes.
So I shared
Thank you
that
for
comment
catching.
with staff.
Okay, so we'll amend it. And do I have an adoption with the amendment stated?
With that amendment, I move to accept the minutes.
Okay. Do I have a
I'm a
second?
second.
Armin gives me a second. Okay, all in favor, Armin?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Glenn is aye. Okay, so the next, let's see. The next two items, D and E, are continuances. So that's for the Philip Mayall R10 zoning project and the Sam and Tracy Awad R20 zoning project. Do I have a motion for the continuance?
So moved. Oh, I'll let Kristen do it.
Okay, Kristen, do I have a second?
Yeah, I want to second her. Yeah.
Jane? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Armin?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Kristen?
Aye.
Eugene?
Aye.
And Glenn. Thank you. So we have no study sessions this week. Continued public hearing. We have a presentation and staff report for the Obrien Land Company. We've seen them twice now. And if I remember correctly, this will be our last time, correct?
Correct. So yes, starting off with two minor corrections to the published staff report. As the chair noted, this is the third of 3 meetings to fulfill the commitment under condition of approval 27. And the staff report noted that this was the second of the third. So yes, you have seen it twice previously. 3. And the city council meeting where the overall entitlement, the land use permit was approved, began on August 24th and extended into August 25th. And so technically the project was approved on August 25th, not the 24th. So with that, we have the applicant has responded to the round of comments that were provided by the commission at the second meeting. As well, we have brought forward a draft approval resolution, and would be happy to take you through some minor edits to that, either now or after the applicant presents and before you go into discussions and deliberation. So
Okay, let's have the applicant present then. So are they limited tonight to 10 minutes?
10-minute presentation. You can engage in question and answers for as long as you would like. Then any members of the public can comment for up to 3 minutes each, and then the applicant's afforded a 5-minute rebuttal.
Yeah.
So I'll bring in Karen Callie and David Gates and Edward Kim. So you're welcome to turn on your microphone and video. Hello, Ms. Callie.
Okay. Hi, good evening, commissioners. I'm Karen Colley with Obrien Land Company. And first of all, we wanted to thank you for the feedback you provided at the last 2 hearings. It was helpful for us to be able to make some nice improvements to the plan. So thanks for that. Tonight, as Greg said, we're going to focus on the changes since the last hearing. And as we go through the presentation, you'll see there's 3 areas where we're going to show you some alternatives. Since this is our last meeting with you, one is the building ID signs in front of the residential buildings. There's 2 versions. The first one being a horizontal format that's a sign that's integrated into the entry wall in front of the buildings. And that's actually the one that the applicant team prefers, but we did consider another alternative that we wanted to show you. And that's a tall monolith style sign that sits at the end of that entry wall. So we'd like to get your opinion on that. Also in front of the residential buildings, there's 2 choices of pavers that we wanted you to see and comment on. And you had also asked us in the maintenance building to make some modifications to the exterior. So then again, there again, we have two alternatives to show you, and we'd like to get your feedback on that. With that being said, I'll just go ahead and turn it over to Ed Kim with KTGY Architects and David Gates, our landscape architect, and they will go over with you in detail the changes we made since the last hearing in response to what we heard from you.
Great, thank you, Karen. Thank you, commissioners and staff, for your time, and I'll just kind of jump right in. So at the second DRC hearing, we had talked primarily about the building entry lobbies for the 2-story and the 3-story. And again, site-wide, as Commissioner Sim had mentioned in the last hearing, about a relationship and an integration between both architecture and landscape to not only pronounce certain nodes and moments within the overall site plan, but also again in instances like the building lobby spaces where it can help pronounce and accentuate an entry sequence and also a progression for both the pedestrian and residential, or sorry, the pedestrian and the vehicular scale. So the comments that we heard the last time around was really centered around how the architecture and landscape can inform one another to create a sense of arrival for both the 2-story and the 3-story buildings. We also heard from the last DRC meeting, the nuances and the subtlety in design and the detailing of things like the lobby door, right? Looking as if it was a little more commercial. I think the commission had encouraged us to take a look at what it means for doors and fenestration and windows that are more in keeping and more in line with the rest of the architectural language that's been set on both the 2-story and the 3-story buildings. So we started to look at, our team gathered, and we worked hand in hand with both landscape, David Gates and KTGY team. So it may make more sense to dive into the plan to see the update and plan before we go to the 3D renderings, and I can allude or kind of touch more on the architecture there. But I'll turn it over to David Gates, to talk through the site plan.
Thanks, Ed. Can you hear me all?
Yes.
So this is the plan view, and I think you, good evening, by the way. Good to see all you folks again. I think there's been a common thread in your comments, which we respect, which is to create a better relationship between the architecture and the landscape, and to get a better overlap and, I would say, in and out between landscape and architecture. So this is the plan view, and what you saw previous was what we presented to you at our last meeting. So this plan makes a few changes, and what we've done is we've looked at the architecture with the indent and pick up on Ed's changes with the front door. We wanted to keep it open and visible. We wanted to change the wall so that we have the rubble wall on either side. It's 42 inches high. We created a lower wall out of granite, which would be a honed finish. The reason we're doing that is we like the direction of the darker colors in the indent on the elevation. So our goal is to choose a material, an elegant material, a little more refined than the rubble wall that matches in color and texture. It's a bit of a matte finish. So that wall now extends from the point of indentation on one side and the point of entrance on the other side. You can see that is a bit of a private patio there, but we're going to the point of indentation. We're pulling the wall in so we keep the patio intact. So also we'd like to have a discrete tree species there that sort of says entry. So we've sneaked that in on the patio side because we don't want to block the entry to the building. By doing this, we've created a small outdoor seating area. And you can see we've added some seat pads, which are matching the seat pads out for the sidewalk. So all of those sort of create that hopeful invite in. As Karen mentioned, we have those linear pavers we're calling the rug. We've changed those from a brick scale. We've larger and linear, so they're 3 times as long as they are wide, and they're bigger in scale. And we have a couple of graphics of that. So I think one of the comments was add a little more detail, personality to the planting at the entry point. So we've created a plant pocket on the seating side, and we've also added the pot, and we took away the bench, which was creating actually another material which we don't really need. So Ed's showing you the elevation here, shows you the nature of the wall, how the wall needs an end, so and a gap between the two materials. So we created a monolith there, and you can see our walls a little lower. We're 36 inches high. We want to invite views in, but we would like a bit of an edge. So drive by and walk by, we want this to sort of be brought to the fore with nice materials. Also, I think Ed has a couple of very nice light fixtures on the wall there. So I think there's one more image that shows you this, and I'll talk about the signage. So here you see that we've taken the same graphic that we had on the wayfinding signage, and it's a polished piece of the same granite sitting on the hone, so it'll be darker and more reflective. So we've mounted it on the wall. And you can see in the next scheme, there was a good comment made about maybe we need something a little more vertical to announce. So I would call this a blade. It's the same granite we had, only probably 6 inches wide. So we've kept the graphics the same. This to be close to the height of the door frame. So it's working with the scale of the architecture, and its sign graphic is about eye height, 5 feet high. So there are two here, and Karen mentioned, we could go either way. But if you wanted a vertical element, this we hope would achieve that. So this is the solution for the 2-story building. Ed, maybe I'll throw it back to you to talk about.
Thanks, David. So architecturally, I think one of the comments that we really start to study, and this view may actually portray that the best, was about the entry doors, right? I think the last time we were in front of the commission, right, there was a sense that the lobby doors felt out of line with the rest of the architectural elements. It felt a little bit more commercial. So what we started to study was bringing back some residential scale, divided lights, reducing the amount of side light to really draw the visitor, the pedestrian, the resident in on a very linear axis with the area rug, further accentuating a French door appearance. You'll also notice as we're working in tandem with David about the entry patios and the seating arrangement, we thought there was an opportunity to bring some interest again back into the recessed nook here by distinguishing a second level window grouping or window type versus the ground floor window type, where the ground floor mimics very closely what happens on the rest of the architectural language or the architectural elevation. But the second level distinguishes itself. So I think, trying to keep within a harmonious approach with both landscape and architecture. The goal here was to create almost a progression or a layering effect of multiple experiences, whether it's the vehicular experience, the pedestrian on the sidewalk, the pedestrian or the resident in the seating area, or what I like to call an outdoor foyer before actually entering into the lobby space. And I think adding to the draw from the outdoor and indoor experience is going to be the transparency that's shown in this rendering as well, that you can see activity, visual connection down the area rug through the lobby doors into a lobby and passive kind of seating location. So we took a very similar strategy when it comes to the 3-story entry lobby as well, right? Very similar comments here and great feedback from the commission, the second hearing, about how to integrate architecture and landscape while pronouncing the building entries. Again, the same comment regarding the entry door, feeling a bit more commercialized here, that it wants to be in line with the rest of the residential scale and residential articulation of the fenestration and massing. So again, I'll hand it over to David to talk through the plan and the updates there before we jump into the 3D elevations and renderings.
And again, the elevation sketch you saw there was the prior scheme, and I think the comments came. It's not unique with respect to wall, and it's kind of hidden a little bit by the walls. So here's the plan view, and again, we're working with the indentation of the architecture, the nature of the space around it. This one's a little tighter, but we're pulling the wall outward a little bit, dropping the height of the wall. Here we have 2 trees symmetrically on either side of the entry, and they are in the private patio zone. You can see our wall monolith extends just past those. So we're picking up on the fenestration pattern and again, the color at the recess. And again, we have room in this case for seat pads on both sides of the entry. We have flower pots on both sides. We don't have the ground cutout except on the right side. And it's the same outboard of the sidewalk, seat pads, same plant palette, same tree, only 2 of them. And again, you can see the carpet or the rug pattern where we have the linear pavers to sort of pull you in. The next image then shows a little bit the character of that. So you can see our wall line tries to end relative to the architecture, the color change on the left side, the shape and the fenestration and the railing detail on the right side. And you can see the plant material as well. Same honed wall. In this particular sketch, you see the wayfinding signage again mounted on the wall. And I think if you go ahead to the SketchUp, you'll see the same version of it where the wayfinding sign is low. See the pot colors the same and the pavers. And this is low, and the next image will show you the blade sign, sitting out on the perimeter of that. So it's basically the same concept, but differently based on the architectural.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well. We're employing the same strategies and the design solutions for the 3-story lobby space. Right, we do have the advantage of a higher ceiling in this lobby. So you will see the clear story lighting, but again, trying to mimic the residential articulation and breakup of the window, or sorry, of the lobby doors, right, with the divided light, the mullions, trying to bring a residential French door-like feeling. And again, strong axes from exterior to interior, with plenty of transparency and visual connections through.
Chair Cat, the 10-minute timer has gone off.
And so I'll quickly run through the remaining ancillary buildings that we had discussed. So in the previous DRC hearing, we had talked about the maintenance building, a standalone maintenance building. And the comment that came back was, this is going to be, half the time, I mean, for residents and guests, front door visual impact, being right off Deer Hill Road. So what we started to look at, and the encouragement and the recommendation from commission was, looking at a color tone that's warmer, more complementary, and in line with the residential. So that's kind of what we did here. We started to warm up the block masonry, but also taking advantage of the maintenance building being set in landscape, right? That there are opportunities for vertical screening of vines, for shrub elements and landscape elements as well, to not only soften but layer to reduce the visual impact of this building. The second alternate that we started to look at was, what happens if we introduce a cementitious lap siding that's more in line with the residential buildings themselves? Again, the similar strategy here would be to use landscape to soften the foreground, and as well as 3 of the elevations. There's the potential for larger and more vertical shrubs, but the one caveat here would be the vertical vines, the screening element would probably not attach to the lap siding as well as a CMU block. So there are definitely different strategies for creating a layering and a softening using the landscape that David Gates would be proposing. Next, we were looking at the trash enclosure, and a very similar concept or feedback here regarding warming the color tones to be more in line and complementary to the residential buildings. So again, the strategy here is to warm up the CMU block, still staying within the same similar family of color and tonal values to the residential buildings. I think one thing that we continue to explore is For these typical trash enclosures, we're able to get landscaping on 2 to 3 sides of this enclosure, which would actually help again, right? The same strategy with the maintenance building would be to soften the edge and reduce the visual impact with vine wall, with shrubs and landscaping in front. And then lastly, I'll conclude with a carport. There was a comment and a feedback last time regarding, can the carports become more subtle, and what are some strategies? So we started to look at various color tones to the structure themselves. And what we found in our studies is that the lighter structure that employs or that utilizes a color, similar to the residential buildings, would actually help the carports feel as if they're less impactful on the view angles and the residential building. One thing we started to look at, or one thing that we explored was a darker color, and kind of doing the opposite. And one thing that we found is that it actually feels substantially heavier. It makes the structure feel more grounded, and it carries a little bit more weight. So the design strategy and the solution here, and the thought that we've had as a team, is the lighter color tone will actually make the structure feel like it's disappearing in view. So so that's kind of our presentation for today. We'd love to hear feedback and thoughts. But again, as Karen described, the 3 alternatives that we had presented in this slide deck were the building ID sign, the maintenance building, the materiality there, and the area rug for the entry lobbies.
Ed, were we going to show the citrus garden wall?
Yeah, that's right.
Is that up for?
That's totally right. I had forgot about that. Sorry, David.
No problem. Also, I think that from the landscape architect's point of view, we're comfortable putting a vine on the split face block. This can be rather aggressive, but I don't think we'd recommend putting it on the other materials. So if we want a green building, that vine will actually cover that building in a couple of years. Another comment that came from the board a couple of times was, again, like I said, creating that inside-outside, creating a relationship through the landscape that works with the architecture to sort of bring you in terms of activities and visually. So we explored actually taking the rubble wall from the trash down there and bringing that wall all the way in, jogging it a little bit because we have some C3 requirements along there, and letting that wall bring your eye into what I'll call the fulcrum point. So that knuckle, it creates sort of a sense of mystery. It brings you there sort of from one space, gives you a view into another space, and then you move into that. So I think that our goal is to do the same with the trees so that there's a line of tall columnar trees that sort of deposits your eye into the point. We take pride in the fact that you go from one space to another. It makes it a little more fun to move through subspaces. So we have a nice opportunity to reach you at that point of entry where you drive by and come in as a pedestrian. If you remember, it's a rather nice link to our perimeter trail. So it sort of will connect you back and has the connection to the great views on the outer edge. So anyway, we thought we would run that by you and see what your thought was. It would be the same rubble wall that will sit around the outer perimeter in front of the private patios. Anyway, we throw that out to tease you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. So commissioners, do I have any questions directed to the applicant? None? Or
Yeah,
I don't
I
see
do.
everyone, that's the problem.
Yeah, this is John. I got a couple of quick questions.
Sure, John, go ahead.
Um, uh, Question for Mr. Kim first. Regarding the revisions you've made at the entrance, I would be interested in seeing how the scale of those moves play out along the entire long elevation. Do you have revised full building elevations that show that?
Yeah, at this moment, we don't have a full elevation. We kind of zoned right into the building to kind of place us into that space.
You know, my assumption then that I just like to confirm that this is accurate. The landscaping is of a more significant scale at the entries than along the entire rest of the facade. Is that correct? There are no trees of the size of that pink one there, any place except for flanking the entry?
Yeah, I think you'll find we have a plant cut out between the privacy wall and the sidewalk that will allow us to put a small tree shrub in there. But we do have pockets, and we showed that at the last meeting, you know, where we can put some taller scale trees in. They don't show up in this elevation, but depending on the pattern of the patio walls, we do have opportunities for some groups of trees that will be in scale with the building. I think we showed those elevations and plans in meeting number 2.
Okay, well, just keeping to questions rather than comments. And then the other question is for Mr. Gates regarding the utility buildings from a landscape standpoint. Do you have a preference or a recommendation on the block versus the cementitious siding option?
Actually, I do. In this particular scheme, we could literally berm the soil. If we waterproof it, we can actually put the soil on that, not high, maybe 30 inches. And then we can run the vine like Ed shows, and then we can plant. So the split face block is actually a nice residence for the roots for vines. And I think we talked about the ficus. There are several vines that will do that well. So from a landscape point of view, the permanence and the nature of the split face block is very.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you both.
Okay, any other commissioners? Eugene, Kristen, Armin? Okay, we are going to move on to public. Well, I guess we should hear the revisions in the. Yeah, let's hear the revisions in the resolution so that the public hears those before they make their comments.
Terrific. Are you seeing the resolution 2021-04?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So we made some minor revisions that I'll take you through now. In item 3A, we noted that the EIR had been certified and an addendum had been prepared. We just noted that that was also adopted as part of the council's action. In further on in A, we noted at the end the installation of signal preemption devices and are proposing to add a clause as required by mitigation measures TRAF 2 and TRAF 5. That's where those preemption devices are called for. Will improve emergency vehicle response times. In addition, student safety would be improved through the addition of a new drop-off zone. So that last sentence is proposed to be added. And the last paragraph of B talks about some overall design changes for the site, swapping two-story and three-story buildings, the colors, materials changing, and just collectively the proposing a sentence at the end that these refinements materially reduce the visual impacts of the project, which is staff's conclusion. And then that's it with respect to the content of the resolution. And what I'll do now is share with you an exhibit submitted by the applicant. So you'll recall that the condition 27 gave the design review commission kind of broad scope to work to reduce the visual impacts of the project and balance grading. And so with respect to kind of the overall numbers, how it has changed and evolved through the design review process. The residential building area in the original, which is column B, versus the current plans, which has been shown in the plans, but we had not and have not to date revised the description on the staff report and resolution, has gone up. And then the amenity buildings were originally 2 buildings in the original proposal from 2011, and they're now 3 smaller buildings and have gone down in square footage. The carports similarly have gone down in square footage, and you can see the total project building area goes up slightly. The overall parking spaces have come down, so there's less paving out there. And then there are a few more trees removed and substantial reduction in the overall, the overall grading is reduced by 20,000 cubic yards. But the biggest impact, which was a serious concern, is the amount of off-haul going from 300,000 cubic yards down to 0. So besides swapping the 2- and 3-story buildings, the wholesale revision in the style of the architecture and the colors, that is a significant change that the design review process has afforded through the project. And so taking those numbers that have come out of the design review process and drawings, this would be the revised project description, simply noting that there are 3 non-residential buildings: the clubhouse, the leasing office, and the co-working fitness studio. So these revisions just show what I shared with you in the Excel table in a kind of project description format. And so those are the changes that staff is proposing. So this project description would, and I'm happy to leave it up as long as you would want, would be at the top in the header. But I wanted to take it through.
Okay, I have a good question for you, Greg.
Sure.
There's about a 10% reduction in parking spaces. How does that fit with the city's minimum requirements for the number of units that are here?
It complies.
Okay. Okay, so we're moving on to public comments. Do we have any raised hands or star 9s coming in today?
So if you would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen or star 9 on your phone. We have no callers. And no raised hands.
Okay, so that doesn't really require any rebuttal. So we're going to move on to commissioners' comments.
So I will move the applicant team out to be attendees while the commission discusses and deliberates,
Okay.
but could always move them back in if there are questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so who wants to start tonight's discussion? I don't see everyone, so I don't see John. So who wants to start? Say something. No one.
I
Okay.
can start. This is John.
Yeah, okay, John, go ahead.
Was happy to let anybody else start. Let's see. I think that that the revisions that you've made at the entries are generally successful. I think the main successes have to do with the landscape. I think the design changes in the architecture are much more subtle, but I think that the extension of what Mr. Gates called the carpet, that pavement, and the larger scale plantings are very helpful to define the entries and the seating area as well. I would say that the blade element as a wayfinding marker, I find visually a little foreign to the rest of the composition. And even though I think it's helpful just as a marker, I don't think it fits. And I would favor the same design, I think, as the applicant favors regarding the wayfinding. Regarding the utility buildings, I share Mr. Gates' opinion that the warm colored block seems to lend itself better to being integrated with the landscape. I also suspect it will be more durable and therefore look better in the long term. So that would be my preference. Regarding the carports, and maybe it was just something in this more recent rendering that I noticed, it seems to me that the high edge of the shed roof of those carports interferes with the view out from the windows of the adjacent building to a degree I don't think I had noticed in the previous rendering. And so when we get to a point of inviting the applicant back in, I'd like to understand the height of that high point relative to the windowsills of the adjacent buildings. There's a pretty decent slope on those, and I think you could probably lower the high end by a couple of feet, still have a reasonable slope for drainage, and that might help the view out. So I would look for a response on that. Regarding my question earlier about the long elevation, I would like to see the landscape used to such that from a distance you can perceive the building entries. And so it's a little bit, that desire is a little bit in conflict with the desire to punctuate the building with substantial landscape. And so I'd be interested to see the whole elevation, but I guess this is, the whole, elevation rendered with landscape, but I'm not sure we'll have a chance to do that. But I would just offer that my interest would be to see the entries apparent from a distance from vehicular scale as you're driving on the site. Other than that, I would just say I appreciate the development. I think the ideas of integrating landscape with the architecture are being pushed forward very nicely, and I see that as an enhancement for sure. Thank you.
John, do you have any comment about the rubble wall that's at the one open space area? The last thing that was shown to us almost.
At the build adjacent to the building entry?
No,
Or
it
the-
was at
The trestle.
I don't remember which courtyard it was. It was the
the two courtyards that
where
kind
the
of
fire
link to
yard-
each other?
fire truck turnaround thing was.
Yeah, I would say I don't have a strong opinion on that.
Okay. Who wants to go next? Eugene?
Sure. I just want to be simple and clean. I really appreciate this landscape architect and the architectural team. They listened to almost everything that we talked about previously. I believe that my biggest challenge to them is to maintain the initial poetic concept and try to instill it into the detailing. I think they today, through their own presentation about the multi-tier layering going on, scaling at multiple scale levels, for me, that this project needs to do that so it goes beyond the apartment look, quote unquote apartment look. We know that apartments could be beautiful as well, but it's just that robust detailing, thoughtfulness, execution of the scaling elements. When I say scale, I'm thinking about exactly what the landscape architect talked about today. He was honing in on even the low wall, to the plant selection, to the locations of those elements that are both architectonic and landscape in nature, to integrate those two and formulate the positioning of the door even as a way to kind of create harmony, holistically thinking about pulling elements out in a vista, distant elements, getting it closer to the actual objectified element, and then trying to see through the building as best practically possible. So I'm really, really pleased today. Of course, I would like to see this to be even wow, but we understand the reality here. But I think that they've addressed a lot of the things we talked about. The citrus garden, really appreciate the landscape architect thinking about how to create an opportunity out of a leftover looking a party with the triangulated space with a little pinching going on and releasing it. And I'm going to be keeping that landscape architect on the spot if that doesn't get executed. But I think that Mr. Gates, out of due respect, I know he can do a great job, but the idea of how to pinch it in and then release it and try to figure out how to realistically further go beyond theory of how to do inside outside was quite refreshing. So that's that. I'm open to what John said as well, and Kristen looks like is nodding her head, and Armin too, about the material choices. I think that's the way to go, John. I do appreciate your asking that. And I am also sharing with John's perspective that seeing the overall layout of this pattern with the door contextually to see how it works, I think very appropriate. So I totally support John's comment as well. So again, in short, I think this has gone a long ways, and really appreciate the sensibilities this development team, the design team in particular, has given to this project at a very important place in our community. So thank you.
Just to clarify, Eugene,
Yeah.
so the blade sign or the horizontal?
I'm with John and Kristen. I think, well, I don't know. Kristen hasn't talked, but I do feel like we don't want to create a temporaneous look. Like, when I'm used to seeing blades, sometimes it depends how you do it, right?
Okay.
I'm used to seeing, like, come here and rent, right? Like big sign, and we got some rent, whatever going on. So as long as it's done thoughtfully, then I could be open-minded. But I think we're all looking for more permanence, right? Presence, permanence, not temporaneous feel, right? So I think in that sense, maybe horizontal. But again, I think John mentioned the point. Let's see how that blade all works along the facade or horizontally to make a final determination. Let the city council figure that out, maybe. Okay, thank you.
Kristen?
Well, I agree also that it has been great to see the progress of the development of the project and the very thorough, well-considered presentations. So I do appreciate that. I agree with what Eugene and John have said about their assessment of the decisions. So I prefer the horizontal sign. I really appreciate the new carpet coming out into the, I don't know if he said carpet or rug, but the new landscape feature. My one thing that I'm not as convinced about, there was a mention about the new, at the 2-story entry, the new 2nd-story windows, that the scale of those has been changed from what the lower windows are adjacent to the entry. And to me, that made it feel a little bit more busy. I don't think it's a super dominant feature of the entry, but for me, that was not as compelling of a change in the project. I actually like it when the windows are kept more consistent and simple adjacent to the entry so that the entry itself stands out. And then in terms of the maintenance buildings and trash enclosures, I think going with the block makes a whole lot more sense. I think either version of the building, the form and the presence is not very exciting. So I think allowing the landscape to screen it really is the ideal way to go, and the block will do that better. So I think that makes more sense. I still have some concerns about the carports, but maybe it's just the nature of the carport that it blocks the building. You have these well-conceived buildings, and then not very far away from them, you have these large carports that feel very different and like a screen to prevent you from seeing it. So maybe it's inherent in the reality of what a carport is. But I agree with John, it would be interesting to see if there's a way to decrease the presence of those roofs by decreasing the slope a little bit. But otherwise, I agree with what John and Eugene have said.
Okay, and the rubble wall?
I thought that was a nice development. I didn't have as strong of an opinion about that. I'm impressed with what they're doing at that citrus garden, and that seemed like a good and consistent direction.
Okay, thank you. Armin?
I agree with everything said by the other commissioners. I appreciate all the developments into the architecture and landscape design. One concern I had was the privacy at the patios on the ground floor adjacent to the entry. And I think the addition of the trees and bookending the entry really helps both ways to just accentuate the entry and also helping with the privacy of those patios. For this sign, I think for the 2-story building, definitely the horizontal was the more successful one. For the 3-story buildings, going with something that's more vertical, I think that might be helpful and looking more consistent with the verticality of the building. Though from the rendering, it's hard to say because the rendering is so close up that the scale of the signage, I feel it's a bit too large. Even if we go with the vertical, I think it needs to be shorter than what's shown there. Maybe 6 foot tall would be the right size. But for the 2-story horizontal, 3-story, it might be, the vertical one might be a shorter vertical one might be a good option. Split face block with the landscape, I think that's a preferred alternative among the ones that they were presented here, and that's it. One thing about the carport, just pulling out the columns. There are many different ways that structurally this carport could work, and going with a sort of butterfly roof. I'm not suggesting like going extra steep, but maybe that's a way to just raise the edges. So in terms of the visual connection, that helps for the ground floor units, that they wouldn't just get to drop low, so it blocks the views.
Okay, and my comments parallel many of the other comments that you heard. I think the rug entering the building is a good addition. The scale of that is better. I like the addition of the landscaping that's at the entrance. I like the horizontal wall, or the horizontal sign is my preference for both style of buildings. The only real question I have, and architecturally it looks really good at 36 inches. And I don't really want the landscaping, the small shrubs in front to crown the wall. But I am a little concerned at a 36-inch high wall about the security, that we're entering a building where someone can hide behind the wall. And if it was lower, it would be less of an opportunity to do that. So I suggest maybe you want to look at it, see if there's a little bit of whittling down that may not affect the overall appearance, but may improve security. I like the block maintenance building and trash receptor buildings and the landscaping that is enhanced around those buildings. I like the bump out of the rubble wall at the citrus garden. I think I parallel Eugene, is that my first reaction is, well, the entrances weren't as wow factor as I was sort of hoping we would get, but actually when I heard the full discussion about what was being done, I agree that it was a good improvement. And to the other commissioners, I believe this is the last time we see it. So while we have those comments, they're going to have to address it themselves if they think that it's the landscaping needs a little tweaking to make sure that the enhancement is at the doors and not too much linear throughout, and the scale is okay. And also the carport, I don't think it's a big deal architecturally on how they can reduce that slope, if they can in fact reduce the slope. Although I did believe in meeting number 1, they said that the canopies were for solar as well. So I don't know if there's any orientation issues associated with that. So they're going to have to use their judgment in that regards. As far as the resolution goes, I have no problems with the resolution with the amendments that were shown on the resolution. I'm a little surprised at the 10% drop in parking, and I hope that doesn't show up on Pleasant Hill Road because there's not enough parking up there. But otherwise, everything looks like we had some major accomplishments in the 3 meetings. Thank you. Yes, Greg.
And so the design review process has been this voluntary design review as outlined in condition 27. One of the conditions, the following condition, actually condition 28, is not design related in the purview of the commission, but the timeline for execution of that is tied to before the conclusion of this meeting. And so I just wanted to acknowledge for the record that the applicant has fulfilled condition 28, which was to work with the city to try to come up with a design and ultimately execute. But they're obliged to submit a design to the city for a center median pathway. There's under the umbrella of Sustainable Lafayette, there's a group, Safe Routes to Acalanes, which is proposing a multimodal pathway between Deer Hill Road and Mount Diablo Boulevard down the center median, which would effectively provide a protected multimodal ped bike pathway where you wouldn't have to interact with or cross the freeway on ramps and off ramps. So it would connect the multi-purpose trail south of the boulevard all the way down to Olympic, and which ties into other up all the way up to, so from the boulevard up to basically the high school. So that the applicant has been working with the city on that. They did fulfill their obligation to submit those plans in. I confirmed it with the engineering and public works director today. So I just mentioned it because the timing is, they're obliged to do it before the conclusion of tonight's meeting, and they've done that. So thank you for that.
Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the
Before we
resolution?
go, Chair, I want to be just quick to ask staff through the chair. Greg, will this come back to us commissioners to see the detailing? Because the execution is so important, right? Like, I've seen too many projects where you have the big picture approved, right? All this beautiful idea, but then the execution is like through value engineering and their own reviews of budget, whatever it might happen with market condition, and they do these things, right? That will create a different look, because we're relying on the execution to be really well done. What will allow this to be checked from our commission standpoint? Do we have one review? Well, we don't have any more discretion left, but are we going to be able to review some detailing? I don't want to do their detail, but I do want to see that they have certain robust detailing going on, right? Greg, do we have another review down the road?
We don't have that as a further condition of approval, and I apologize. I didn't speak to the additional condition of approval, which is that there be a full-size mock-up, which has been the practice on other projects as well. And I would anticipate the applicant would do it just for their own edification and confirmation of those features. But with respect to kind of coming back for yet another round of detail and series of meetings with the commission. And I know that there have been prior projects that were conditioned to do that, Woodbury Highlands being one. I think you recently had those conditions preceded SB 330, which limits the city's purview to 5 meetings. So, you know, the applicant may be willing to put forward to potentially one, you know, the chair or another commissioner for feedback. That, you know, they have demonstrated to me that they want to make this a really very nice project. That's not to say that they can go to any expense, but having a set of eyes that is on the commission is helpful. And so we would need to ask them if they'd be willing to have that sort of set of eyes and get that feedback.
Understood. Thank you, Greg. That's all. Thank you, Chair, for your time.
Okay. Okay, so, so we're ready to adopt the resolution, or do I have a motion? Not all.
I'll motion, I'll move. I'll move to adopt the resolution as presented to the Design Review Commission.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Eugene. So we're gonna have a vote. All in favor, John,
Aye.
Armin,
Aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Eugene,
Aye.
and Glenn is an aye. Thank you. I don't have to say don't do anything for 14 days because it won't happen in 14 days, but
But I will note that there is a 14-day appeal period
yes.
where they could appeal, anyone could appeal it up to the city
Yeah.
council.
Thank you. We're ready to move on to the next item.
I will bring Jonathan Fox in.
Okay. And this item is going to be, what is it going to be? New public hearing for Samuel Bing and Linda Lay Lee. And this is for a townhouse project on Stewart Street. So some of us in the commission have seen 2 study sessions on this.
Right. All right, should I get started, Chair?
Sure.
Okay, so first I'll bring up Google Earth to show where the property is located in the context of the city. So let's see, Google Earth. Okay. So zooming into Stewart Street in downtown. Stewart Street is located in the middle of, or in between Highway 24 and Mount Diablo Boulevard in the east end of downtown. The project is located at the end of Stewart Street, so right up against the Highway 24 right-of-way. 2 vacant parcels. We have multifamily units to the east and the south, Highway 24 to the north, Stewart Street to the west, and also there's a preschool, I believe, here at 1049 Stewart Street. All right, so track 9, 9539 and DR 2319 is the application number for the project known as Samantha Townhomes, which is for the construction of 12 condominium units within 3 buildings on vacant parcels on Stewart Street in the downtown. Like Chair Cash had mentioned, there was 2 previous study sessions, one in November 2018 and also another in June of 2019. So this would be the 3rd time the DRC or part of the DRC has seen the project, but the first official meeting, first formal submittal. And we'll get into those study session comments in a bit. So the scope of work, again, is 12 condominium units within 3 buildings. There's the western section that has 5 units. Middle section has 4 units. Eastern section has 3 units. The western section is accessed through new curb cuts, new private driveways off of Stewart Street. And the middle units and the eastern units are proposed to be accessed from 2 new driveways coming off the existing private street to the south. The project includes the request for a major subdivision. So a condominium map to merge the 2 vacant parcels and then identify the unique ownership of each of those condominium units. So each unit would have its own individual owner, and then there would likely be a homeowners association created to maintain the common areas like the landscaping and the driveway. So some major subdivisions require approval from the Planning Commission. Design review is also required for new buildings in downtown, also reviewed by the Planning Commission. A Category 2 tree permit is required for the removal of several trees on the vacant property. There's a number of valley oaks and black walnuts across the property. And also the project requests waivers in line with California State Density Bonus Law. Again, final action to be taken on by the Planning Commission. So as I mentioned before, the study session, wanted to take a moment to show how the project has evolved since the first study session in November until today's proposal. So the first study session in November, you can see based on the Stewart Street elevation that the concept and layout has largely stayed the same. There's 3 buildings, 5 units on the west, 4 in the middle, 3 on the east. The western units come off of Stewart Street, the middle units and the eastern units come off of a private road from that private street. But you'll see that the color and design has changed since then. So the next study session in June 24th is kind of where we arrive at close to its current design. So the applicant came back with an entire new set of color and material to address the commission's comments, wanting a variety in color and not having projects follow the tan and beige colors that we see often in other projects in the city. So they did incorporate some new color and material and also massing changes, pop outs, step-ins. And you'll see in the current proposal that the project has largely not changed since that last study session. Color and material, siding, massing has stayed the same. There has been some change in the roof line to show how the project will step with the hillside as it goes up the northeast along the hillside towards Highway 24. But other than that, it's largely stayed the same. Staff finds that the project is largely consistent with a general plan and downtown specific plan. The project is in the East End commercial land use designation of the general plan, which has a maximum density of 35 dwelling units per acre. So based on that maximum density and the lot area of these 2 parcels, they would be allowed a maximum of 13 units and they're proposing 12 units. The project is in the East End district of the downtown specific plan, which is a more recent document that looked at the vision of the city's downtown. This is in the East End, and East End allows multifamily housing by right. The project is in the general commercial 1 district or C1 district, and it complies with the district standards for land use. So again, multifamily housing complies with the off-street parking ordinance, including guest parking, bicycle racks, electric vehicle parking as well. It complies with the maximum building height of 35 feet and the number of stories. The project doesn't comply with the front, side, or rear setbacks for the C1 district, and we'll look at that in a second, or the location of guest parking spaces. But because the project provides 2 below market rate units for conformance with the city's inclusionary housing ordinance, it also complies with state density bonus law, which allows the applicant to request waivers to development standards. So here's the setback, and we'll take a look at those requests. So in the C1 district, the front yard setback to Stewart Street, there's a 10-foot setback required, and they're proposing around 5 feet. To the private street to the south, again, 10 feet is required. They're proposing around 5. And to the rear yard, eastern property line, 10 feet is required, and they're proposing 7. So again, it's not compliant with the C1 district standards, but because they comply with state density bonus law, they're allowed waivers to development standards. And those waivers have to be approved by the Planning Commission or have to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. In terms of review process, the Design Review Commission will act as a referral body and forward a recommendation to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will take final action on the major subdivision, the design review for new buildings in downtown, and the waiver request. So because housing is allowed by right in the East End and the project complies with the city's inclusionary housing ordinance and state density bonus law, the city's ability for review is limited. But the city's review comes in the form of objective standards and the downtown design guidelines. So this is where the Design Review Commission plays a crucial role in reviewing the project against those 2 documents. So we really look forward to your comments when it comes to those 2 items. Like Greg mentioned previously about SB 330, this project also falls within that, and the city has a maximum of 5 meetings to take final action on the project. So that includes DRC, PC, and possibly City Council on appeal. So it's very important for if the commission has comments, that they be thorough today and specific and in line with the objective standards and the downtown design guidelines, so that the applicant can return on April 14th and address those in one full swoop and then proceed to Planning Commission. So with that, staff would recommend that the commission review the project, conduct a public hearing, provide direction to the applicant, and continue the item to April 14th, 2021, so that the applicant can make revisions in line with the commission's comments. And I believe the applicant is here as well to make a presentation. Here for any questions.
Any questions from commissioners to Jonathan?
Jonathan, in lieu of the trees that they're going to get removed, what's going to, are they going to propose new trees, or what's the plan for that?
Yes, they are proposing some mitigation. Let me pull up the landscape plan. The opportunities for landscaping are minimal, but they are proposing a number of trees along Stewart Street and then also along the private street also. So let me take a look at the numbers. But the city
does that conform with the city requirements? Does that conform with the city requirements?
Likely not the entire amount, but let me double check those numbers. Happy to field any other questions from the commission while I'm taking a look at this.
None? Okay, no other questions at this time, Jonathan.
Okay, let's see. Maybe we can also invite the applicant to present while I take a look at this.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
So
Architect Clay Fry is coming in. And then Jonathan, anyone else from the applicant team?
Stuart Rickard.
Very good. Mr. Rickard, Mr. Fry, you're both in the meeting. Please go ahead and unmute and share your.
I'm here, Greg.
Very good.
Hi, can you hear me,
Yes.
Greg? Great. Excellent. I'm going to do the presentation, so I'm going to share my screen now, if that's okay.
Yes. That didn't seem good. Oh, there it is. Great.
Okay, you guys seeing that slide?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay, I'll wait for Jonathan to answer the question about trees before I start.
Actually, why don't you go ahead and present, and that'll afford Jonathan time to confirm numbers and then respond.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much for taking a look at this project. We're really, really pleased to be here. And we're very excited about this project. It's called Samantha Townhomes. Jonathan did a great job of describing the project to you. I will add a little bit to that to say that our project goal from the starting, from when we started this project, was to create a really high quality infill residential project that supports the downtown specific plan. We've got 12 homes Two of them are affordable below market rate homes. As Jonathan mentioned, there's 7 1-bedrooms and 5, or he may not have actually. There are 7 1-bedrooms and 5 2-bedrooms. So it's a really kind of a compact project. We're complying with the parking requirements, as Jonathan mentioned, and we have this terraced concept. So this is a project that we feel really supports the downtown specific plan. It provides pedestrian-friendly access to help vitalize and the downtown and provide housing in Lafayette. As Jonathan mentioned, we have a design that's got a lot of articulation to it. It's got variation in material and color, and we're very excited about the design. In the staff report, there were 5 items mentioned for discussion today, and what we would suggest is that we will go through our thoughts regarding 3 of those items here with the DRC. And then the other 2 items we're happy to review with DRC, but we think they maybe better belong with staff. And so the ones we'd like to, and this presentation will focus on, are open space and opportunities for creating community, softening the roof staircases, and providing an analysis of alternative building configurations and access points. And what we would suggest reviewing with staff is these 2 subsections of the objective design standards, CL2 and HS3. They're kind of technical. CL2 is kind of a percentage calculation. We'd like to work with staff to figure out exactly how that should be calculated. We believe we comply. And then HS3 has to do with articulation. We'd like to review that with staff as well. And then there is a request for additional plantings. And so we'd like to talk with staff about that, because that's really a kind of push and pull, how much space is available to do that kind of thing. So with that, so open space, community, and community opportunities. So we originally did not have roof decks in this project, so we added roof decks in the project to create additional open space. We have, as I mentioned earlier, a compact design with porches, so it's very community friendly, where the occupants will be on their porches. They will see other residents there as they pass by, because it's a pedestrian friendly project where people are going to be walking in and out of this 12-unit project. And then we've also down in this area here, we have a kind of community common space where the mail is delivered and people will be collecting. So we expect, folks to gather there and have, random chance meetings there. Our open space does comply with the requirements of the city, and I think we believe they're appropriate to a small project of this size. Regarding the softening the roof staircases, so this rendering shows how the roof staircases extend beyond the roof line. It also shows that they are mostly screened from Highway 24. This is a rendering showing the project as viewed from Highway 24. It's here behind these trees, and an actual photograph of the area after the story poles went up. You can barely see the story poles. They're down here. So the project is really well screened. That said, we're willing to change the design. We are concerned about a design that includes planting and irrigation up on the roof. It's a waterproofing and liability issue for us to include that in the project in its original design. we do anticipate that folks will decorate their roof decks with plantings, and we'll have them. But for us, as part of what we build, we are willing to, or interested in your thoughts on some other way to create shadow and variation that we could perhaps apply to those staircase extensions, something like that would be like that. And maybe it's a material that's durable and can be created into a pattern that creates, like I say, shadow and interest if you happen to see those staircases from the freeway. Another item that was requested for discussion was the alternate building configurations, and we've proposed this terrace design after a lot of investigation of other options. And I'll briefly go through what that has been. So this is a survey of the site, and it's a site that has kind of a steep slope at the bottom, then a more leveled area, and another steep slope, and then another more leveled area, and another steep slope on it. And there's a few ways to lay this out, but if we kind of boil them down to really the most simple or fundamental variables, they are an I plan like this, where you line up townhomes at the north and the south, and you have a drive in between that then exits onto this private drive here. Or you can have a T-shaped plan, which is similar at the bottom, but it has a bar at the top of buildings, and then you again go back down here. And we, at a previous study session, were asked to, and then the third fundamental choice is a terrace plan, which is what we've chosen, which has the advantage of kind of allowing the buildings to settle into the steeper parts of the site, which reduces their apparent height. That's why it's preferred. So we did at a previous design review committee, and I think with staff, do a peer review. It was requested of us of this T-shaped configuration, and we had an independent civil engineer review that for us, and that was CBG. And this design sort of fundamentally doesn't work, and neither does what I called the I plan. And the reason is the slope is such that it's very difficult to get cars in and out of the carports of these buildings here. And especially as the slope is varying as you go up the site, it's really, really awkward, and it just fundamentally doesn't work. Whereas a terrace plan kind of really works well and is harmonious with what the site is already doing, because those flat areas there kind of naturally lend themselves to be drive aisles. And like I said, the buildings settle down into the site, which reduces their height. So so that's what we analyzed in terms of different configurations. I do think this rendering shows that it fits very well with the scale of the adjacent buildings. And that's the end of my presentation. We're interested to hear your thoughts.
Okay, do I have any questions from commissioners?
Yeah, this is John. I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
My question is regarding the utility of the roof garden spaces on the northernmost units closest to the freeway. There's an acoustic concern. Have you done an acoustic study to determine the noise level that would be experienced by occupants on that roof?
Yeah, There's been an acoustic study that was done for an adjacent project. We didn't do one. Our project, unlike that project, is set down from the freeway, so we're not as exposed. That said, there's no denying that it's outdoors and it's probably 100 feet from the freeway. There is some shelter because the stair extensions do shield you, but it's sort of it's a condition of the site that we really can't do much about.
Yeah, I don't know if a glazed sound wall on that north edge would be a help. I think the stairs actually could be successful for all but the northernmost units as a sound protection.
Mm-hmm.
That's my only question for the applicant. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, through the chair.
Yes, you
it's
do.
weird. I'm in slow motion there. The fire lane. Has the fire department or the fire marshal reviewed your project yet?
They have.
Okay.
And
Give us an assessment what their thoughts were.
yeah, and maybe I can turn it over to Clay to answer that question.
So the fire department, I've specifically reviewed this with both the assistant fire marshal and the fire marshal, and we've discussed whether they could park on the street, whether they could park on the slope. They requested that the slope be no greater than 15%, I believe, which is what it is. And the other alternative is if it is designed as a type 3 building, the fire department does not require rooftop access, in which case they have no concerns.
My question is specific to the middle units, the middle one. There's 3 linear spines in your partie, the middle one. How do you get into the furthest reaches of the middle one?
Well, if it's a type 3 building, you don't need to drive a fire truck in there. You only need to provide access to the ground floor, and you don't need to provide ladder access.
Oh, yeah, I stand corrected. Thank you. I got you.
There's a nuance to the construction type now that allows us to not have to do things that we used to do when I wasn't gray.
Okay, I have a question. So the private street, is it no parking because the fire truck required access?
It's no parking because of its width.
Okay. And I have a question going back to the first presenter. The entry that's shown there on the ground floor at Unit 1, that is the common area with the mail room, or that's the entry to Unit 1?
That's the
No,
entry.
there's a. Do you want to take that one, Clay?
It's currently designed as the entrance to Unit 1. The mail area is outboard of that.
No, he said, first thing is that part of the common area was the common area for the mail room.
No, it's not a mail room. The mail is outside, but there's an outdoor patio area where residents can get their mail, run into each other. That's what I meant.
Okay. Okay, so yes, Jonathan, you have a response? Or?
Yes, I want to thank Commissioner Hadilo for the patience in giving him his response. So of the 11 trees to be removed, the city's tree ordinance requires 50 15-gallon trees to be replanted, and the applicant is proposing the equivalent of 21 15-gallon trees to be planted. So that leaves another 29 to either be paid for in lieu fees or to be reduced. The commission can find that that total number can be reduced if the site can't accommodate that many trees.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one other question. Which units are the affordable units?
That's unit 3 on the west section and
Unit 9.
right, unit 9 on the middle section.
It's a
Okay,
one
thank you.
bedroom along Stewart Street, and then the second string, it's unit 9, which is the northernmost unit.
Okay. thank you.
Isn't it unit 7? That's the one that says BMR. 3 and
That was
7.
the original proposal was 2 one bedrooms, and staff challenged that. And so
Okay.
the client changed it to a 2 bedroom, unit 9 and unit 3.
Okay. So the plans there are outdated, the ones that we are looking at.
Okay, so moving on to public comments. Do we have any raised hands, Greg, or star nines?
You get my wife, she really likes what I did. No, nothing.
No raised hands currently. So again, you can use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen, or star 9 on a phone. No one's calling in, and it would appear, yeah, there are no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to, there's just no need for a rebuttal. So we're going to go with commissioner comments. Who would like to start this? What, Greg, go ahead.
Just wanted to check in with you whether you would like Mr. Fry and Mr. Rickard to go back into the waiting room as attendees, or they'd be able to listen to your comments and deliberations, or whether you.
They can stay on, I believe, at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, who would like to start on this session? Armin?
So my comments are in about 3 items. First, I want to start with the landscaping. I agree with the staff comments that the extent of landscaping compared to the size of the project and the amount of units proposed here, they are there is a shortage of the proposed landscape area, and I would ask to increase the amount as much as possible. Now we see mostly just hardscape and these townhomes, and there is not much, even if you say that the extent of open space conforms, but it's mostly hardscape. I would ask to increase the amount of landscape within that area. The second one is the scale and the massing of the buildings. And I think that I appreciate the breakdown of the massing, the in and out. And I think it's working to some extent successfully, especially on the west elevations of each one of these bars. The north, east, and south elevations, I think they lack articulation. And what we see is the large areas of blank walls with minor massing changes. And I would ask the applicant to just look at that and try to just bring the same language all around the project and just bring the same level of articulation to the other elevations. And one precedence that I want to bring up in terms of the scale, I think this is a very similar scale to the Hunter's View Phase 1. Those are affordable housing in San Francisco. And I think that if you could just look at that precedent, I think it's just going to inform both the choice of materials and the massing and the articulation significantly. And that was actually, in terms of the massing, that project is more similar to your first, the initial eye massing orientation on the site that has just long bars of townhomes, and then the middle part is landscape extensively, which is a very successful project. And the last one is the elevations that I want to focus on that even more, that especially the elevations that they are, the east elevations that they are facing the other units, they're the size of the openings and the ratio of the opening to the wall, I think it's very insignificant. So I would request the applicant to just make revisions on that as well. That's it.
Okay. Kristen?
Like Armand, I was also looking at the elevations and looking for a little bit more refinement in the elevation. So we are seeing the, what is it, the Stewart Street elevation is the primary elevation in all the representations. And I think that is far and away the most resolved and refined of the elevations. I would also love to see an elevation of all of the private street. When I look in the set, the elevations are just of the south side of each of the buildings, but I don't really have a sense of how they add up to a street facade elevation for that private street. And my sense is that it's going to feel less satisfying than what is happening on Stewart Street. On Stewart Street, it reads as though it's sort of a uniform and fully integrally conceived design, but it doesn't seem like it's as much that way on the south elevation. And I also am concerned about the east elevations of all the buildings because it's treated very much as the back of the building, but the middle unit and the east unit immediately are staring straight at that. And it's not as well articulated. And there's also large windows on that elevation. So I feel like the middle unit is just staring into the windows of the back unit. So that's one of the things that I wonder if there's a way to make that feel like a more neighborly kind of relationship, because it's sort of a driveway in the middle, but staring in their back window, it appears. So those would be my main questions.
Okay, Eugene?
Yeah, so thank you to the applicant. This is my third time seeing this, I think, and in the past, I've had problems with all the numerous curb cuts and the appearance on Stewart Street, and much improved there for sure. But I've always had problem with that middle piece. The Stewart side and the other side have some opportunity to make it more through further articulation and having a front and a back to that a little bit. But that middle part, the middle strip that I've always seen is like, geez, I think you guys could probably sell those units too, probably, but my gosh, it just lacks landscaping and privacy, and it just, you feel like you're living in the middle without any breathability on either the front or back party of that middle area. So I'm not the designer here, but I can offer my critique and my observations on that. But the parts that I want to make sure is that as this gets further developed, because you're trying to demonstrate to us this party was the best preferred methodology compared to the T and others. I haven't seen a donut shape, but I get it. Your market is not a full compact multi-unit with the parking and that sort of thing, but it's more of a townhome type of market condition you're going about. But even in a townhome party, I think you could create more uniqueness to each unit by stepping up the hill. I'm doing like a 75 unit on a hilly railroad spur right now, and each unit are going up and down this sort of a sloped terrain. And you've actually laid out your partie where it could have a potential to work up the hill. But I guess I'm no expert at this. You guys have studied it thoroughly, and you've determined that that is not the way to go, and this is the way to do it in a more of a flat course of effect. So anyways, my offer is that you made some improvements. Thank you for doing that on Stewart Avenue, but I will be looking for details. So I looked at your elevations and perspectives. I'm worried about seeing those. I'm getting to mundane details, sheet metal, flashing, where the massing pieces split apart. I saw in your rendering. And if you're going to do these kind of things, please demonstrate very thorough, robust detailing for sure. I would also be thinking, like, as you further formulate your partie, if you're going to go this way, right? Everyone could come with the genesis of an idea, but then it's the execution. I'm going to be looking for detailing. I'm talking about downspouts. I'm talking about anything that you're going to see that I don't see yet. So right now, you have either a roof drain or the downspouts on the outside. But if you have anything on the outside, I'd be very carefully looking at. So again, my critique is the middle part. I'm still really have some problems with that. Don't see an exciting and more articulation, more demonstration of what exactly is happening in the middle area. And so that's where my focus would be. Stuart, you made some improvements, and thank you. But have always had concern about all the exorbitant amount of curb cuts along that street. And if you could keep demonstrating a way to be safe about it and make a desirable visual impression on Stewart Lane, not only the building, but more of the articulation detail of the curb cuts, the pavement, and all the things that come about it, then I'll be more and more convinced. But you're in the right path there with Stewart. Thank you.
John?
So before I start with my comments, the comments that Eugene made to me raise a question which I'd like to direct to staff. The curb cuts facing Stewart, where we have, what is it, 5 garage doors and with driveways facing that street. Has city engineer looked at that, and is that acceptable from city engineering standpoint?
Yes, we have referred it to the city engineer, who hasn't highlighted any issues with the number of curb cuts in this specific location. Before returning to the next meeting, I'd like to refer the project to the city's traffic engineer to see if he also has any additional comments there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Jonathan. All right, so my own comments. This is, as I'm a relatively new commissioner here, this is my first time looking at the project. I did have a chance to compare the latest design drawings with the previous version. And, you know, the main change I see, which I think is a very positive one, is that each of the buildings, the units kind of slightly and subtly step up the hill along the length of each building. And I find that quite successful. I think it's gentle, it provides some variation in roof line and in facade, and I think that's a very successful move. Other than that, I see it as pretty much the same project it was at the last review. And I think many of the review comments from that time remain unaddressed, having reviewed the minutes from those discussions. So I would say, in general, the west facades, agreeing with what others have said here, seem resolved, I think are quite nice. And that's most apparent on the Stewart Street elevation. But each of the west facades of the buildings are a lot in common. And I think they're quite nice. The south facades, as Kristen also commented, I see as public facades, looking like they're not being treated as public facades. They have a great outlook and an opportunity there, and I see it as an opportunity missed for both the interior and the exterior, expressing a frontage on that private road. The north facades, especially the one, I'm sorry, the north facade faces the freeway. I have no problem with them being very opaque. The east facades, especially the one at the top of the hill facing the neighboring property, I think are kind of unfortunate. I would like to understand what your neighbor to the east sees. I like that demonstrated in your subsequent presentation, because I'm not sure that maybe if you're really below their eye level, it might not be as much an issue, but I just don't know if you are. So I would like to see a representation of that. Let me just look at my notes here. And so in that regard, is there a privacy question for that multifamily building to your east? What is that relationship? So I would like to see some context in your next presentation drawings, a site section that includes the neighboring properties both to the east and the west. What then to demonstrate on the east side the degree of screening, and then I'd like to see, as Kristen also requested, a street elevation on the private road going up the hill, and perhaps a perspective drawing from the bottom of that street showing as the buildings step up the hill. If it's manageable, if your software makes it reasonable to do this, I would also like to see a perspective from the upper corner looking down, simulating a view of what your neighbors will see. It's just hard to evaluate how this fits in the context of this area. I mean, from what I see, it feels like just too much footprint on too little land. And I understand the desire to fit more units in, to take advantage of bonus opportunities with density. And we want to support that. But, I guess also what do these driveways feel like? You described it as pedestrian friendly. Quite honestly, I don't see those driveways as pedestrian friendly. They are vehicle spaces, and a large portion of your outlook from these units are into these relatively narrow driveways. I would like to be convinced that they're pleasant, and so far I'm not. So again, I would say the high point is the expression on your west elevations. I think they're quite nice. I would like to see that language carried to the south, as I think both Kristen and Eugene suggested. And I'd like to understand if there's a way to make your north facades more friendly but not compromise the privacy issues. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. My conclusions don't all match the other commissioners, because my understanding of this project with the density bonus and only having to comply with objective standards really means that you're still asking for pie in the sky, and we're probably not going to see that. So the realities are a couple. Number one, let's look at Stewart Street. There's 5 driveways there. From the very first study session, we said the daycare across the street creates a lot of traffic coming in to drop off kids. There's no curb left whatsoever on your side of Stewart Street. And the fact is, all those driveways are to the extent where the occupants will have to back out into Stewart Street. And again, that puts a tremendous risk associated with young kids in that area. I just don't like the fact that there's 5 curb cuts and 5 driveways on Stewart Street. I think it's too congested and it doesn't address the issue. Now, Jonathan says the traffic engineer is going to look at it. I don't know whether this was appropriate at some point in time. The Circulation Commission should have looked at it. Obviously, they're not here tonight, but this is a dead-end road. And so basically it requires everybody to turn around on the street. And it's not a great situation with that many driveways coming right on Stewart Street. As far as the community interaction, I don't think this project has much community interaction at all, for a number of reasons. Number one, it has no community room or anything like that. The mailbox drop-off area is not what I consider a community area. And also the fact that it's highly impacted by noise. So a lot of the areas outdoors, while they're providing some open space that they're considering the rooftop areas, they're not going to be really very usable. And many of the tenants will probably rarely ever use them. They'll go up there and decide for themselves that listening to motorcycles and cars on Highway 24 is not a worthwhile environment. So I really think that as part of the design review process is that part of the waivers and concessions is that I don't really consider the open space as meeting the 20% open space requirement. That I don't consider these rooftop units as being usable 20% open space that meets what the open space was designated in the city's documents for multifamily dwellings. I agree with the other commissioners that the middle building, the articulation is horrible. I mean, on one facade, it's pretty good, or 2 facades, it's pretty good, but the back facade, the east facade is really, in my opinion, very monotonous because of its, even though it steps up, the step up process is an improvement from what we had, but I just don't see those facades as being very much articulation. I don't remember this project during the study session ever being approached as being a density bonus project. So I look at it now and I say to myself is, so what really changed in the interim period that required them, or, you know, a part of the density bonus is to make concessions. The city makes concessions to make it more economical for you to build these affordable units. And I don't see anything that's changed at all. So in other words, we just, we didn't change the number of affordable units. We changed them to moderate instead of under the city's program, having what, 9% low income and 6% very low income. I just really think that I encourage the city to hire an economic consultant and look at the overall economics. This is an ongoing thing happening on these density bonus projects that we're continually being told is that, oh, this is how we can pencil it out. We have to do this. We have to go to density bonus to pencil it out. I just see it as density bonus is just not accomplishing what accomplishing that for the community. The color scheme is okay with me. The way that you changed the garage doors on Stewart Street so they weren't all uniform, that's encouraging. Landscaping, I concur with what's their name, Inline, or I forget what their name is, Penn. I agree with the city's consultants' comments. You basically have shoehorned many of these plants into the areas. I don't see how it's been addressed. The city engineer said that he wanted to have more bio areas instead of all the water dumping into these planters. I don't see that occurring at this site. I don't see, in fact, the site is so tight that some of the plants that I'm looking at on, let's see, what sheet is this? PL-1 is you have these like Berkeley sedge along the northern property line. The fence is so tight to the planter, the existing fence, I guess that's a Caltrans fence, that you can't even get in there to cut the plants. I mean, you're going to have to crawl over the plants to cut the plants. And Berkeley sedge requires you to cut the plant about once a year in the fall, so it grows back the next year. So I don't have a problem with the species that are being specified. The species are fine, but every planting that's in here is linear, doesn't have much character, isn't even really going to be like Penn said, isn't even going to be able to grow. It's going to have stunted growth because it doesn't even have sufficient ground space to go into. That's pretty much my comments. You know, I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping I can see more articulation, but the reality is that it looks like we're being forced to accept the architecture under the premise of this density bonus and the new requirements by the state. Any other comments? Okay, so I guess the resolution is to have a continuance to, what was the date, April 14th, or I don't have it in front of me.
Yes, April 14th.
Okay.
If that works for the applicant, if that's a sufficient time to address the comments.
I think so. That's plenty.
And I guess the one last comment on
Question. April
John's
14th.
comment about he'd like to see sections from the eastern property. There is a new development that's been approved for that eastern property, although they have done nothing to build it. So Can you address it from their standpoint?
There's a section in the set that shows the property as it exists today. If you'd like something added to that set, please convey that to Greg and we will add that. Greg, if we push this to April 14th, that pushes it beyond the March date, correct? So we'd have to ask for an extension?
Under the Permit Streamlining Act, yes.
So you'll be sending that document on to Stuart?
Yes.
Thank you.
So if I could respond to a question Mr. Fry asked, the section that I see in the set is a 3.7, and I'm asking for that to be extended to include buildings on adjacent properties and also to show the extent of landscape screening as part of that. Is there another drawing I should be looking at?
I don't have landscape screening on their property and I don't have their documents.
No, you've got planting on your property that's not shown in this section.
Correct. If you would like me to add trees, I can add
Yeah,
trees.
yeah, I would like to understand the visual relationship and what the neighbors will see of your building and what your buyers will see of them.
Understood.
Thanks.
Okay, so just to reiterate, right now, is the eastern property right now is showing the shed and the house, which are scheduled to be demolished and a new structure being put there. So we aren't really going to see, if they leave it this way, we're not really going to see the full breadth of how high up the other next structure goes.
Would it be possible for staff to provide information on the approved adjacent project? The general profile information?
Yes, I mean, it's, we
Yeah,
reviewed it.
we
It's
can do
public
that.
document.
The approved plans, I believe, are on the city's website, but we can certainly convey them to Mr. Fry.
Okay, so going back to the resolution, do we have a motion? No motion.
The motion, I motion to continue this till April 14th.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, John. All in favor, say aye. So let's go down. John,
Yes, aye.
Kristen,
Aye.
Eugene,
Aye.
Armand,
Aye.
and Glenn, aye. Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
move on.
Thank you.
See you next month.
So we have other business. Other under other business, we have an art volunteer for March 12th. John, are you available? You wanted, this is going to be a virtual meeting.
Yes, let me just
Oh.
confirm on my calendar, but I think that would be great.
Okay,
The 12th,
What time, Jonathan?
9:30.
Thank you.
that would be great. So I'll
Great.
join you, Glenn.
well, last time Jonathan didn't send me an invitation, so I don't know if he wants only, not to bias it with 2 DRC and only 1 planner. But if he signs me in, I can come on. If he doesn't send me a Zoom invitation, I'm left in the cold like everyone else.
My apologies. I will invite you this Friday.
Okay,
A training session for me, thanks.
yeah, that's fine. Krista can probably tell you, you don't need a training session, right?
Okay,
Pretty straightforward, and it was interesting, so it was good
Yeah.
and pretty quick.
Yeah. Okay, commissioners report. Nothing? I have nothing to report. Okay, adjournment then. Thank you all for your attendance,
Thank you, Chair.
and we'll see you next meeting.
You didn't
Okay,
break
thanks,
that
bye-bye.
record though. You were going to break.
No, I'm not going to meet the 21 minutes, Becky.
Okay, good job, though. Nice. All right. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.